Good afternoon, everybody. This is Kevin Askew, Senior Sales Manager at Programmer's Paradise. I want to welcome you to our free webinar series, Maximizing Data Quality for Value and ROI. Today's session will cover CA ERwin R8, even more new features, a new feature review of CA's new release of ERwin R8. Today's agenda will cover a brief introduction on Programmer's Paradise, followed by the CA ERwin webinar hosted by Victor Rodriguez, our database modeling consultant here at Programmers, and ending up with a Q&A session with Victor. Programmer's Paradise is a leading e-seller of developer and infrastructure tools. We can be found on the web at www.programmers.com. CA ERwin falls under our database worldview ecosystem. Programmer's Paradise is an elite CA partner and the #1 data modeling reseller for CA in North America. We also have a dedicated CA sales and engineering team here on staff, and we provide database modeling and infrastructure design and training services. Under our database worldview, industry-leading tools for your end-to-end database needs can be found, including database platform, design and modeling, development and testing, management and administration, deployment and migration, performance monitoring and tuning, and reporting and mining. Previous sessions from our series can be found at www.programmers.com/CA. Without further ado, I will now turn things over to Victor for the CA ERwin R8 Even More New Features webinar. Victor?
Thanks, Kevin. Let me just take control of the presentation here. Make sure this is working. I need you to bear me for with one moment here. Okay, great. All right, so to start things off, I wanted to quickly just touch base on a couple of topics here before we move on. This has kind of been standard for the past couple of presentations, you may have noticed, and I kind of want to get these out of the way right away. First of all, we have ERwin R8 training available here in our Shrewsbury offices here in New Jersey. On April 12th, please contact us, ca.erwin@programmers.com for anyone who's interested, and there'll be a whole curriculum available. If you just reach out to us via email, I will forward you, the contents of that training if you have any questions and, pricing, etc. Any attendees of any of these R8 webinars, even if you catch them on replay, will get a 20% discount on that training. So there's also a web-based version of the same training on the 14th. It will not be a recording. It will be live, and we'll be able to talk through any issues you're having as you migrate your models, upgrade to the latest software, get familiar with the new processes, etc. So it is a live session. It's a full-day session on the 12th live in here at our offices, and on the 14th via WebEx. So if you do want to get your hands on not only the ERwin evaluation software, but any of the other CA ERwin products, part members of the suite, just go to that bit.ly link, ERwin evals, and you'll see there's links there available for a whole bunch of different products. And finally, the webinar replays. So if you want to catch up on any of these replays at any time, just use that bit.ly link, ERwin webinars. So also there'll be polling again, as we've had in the past few webinars. And so if polling is not enabled when we tell you that the poll becomes active, just make sure to click that button there in the upper right of your display if you happen to not see it. This is not going to happen until the poll goes live, but if we announce that a poll is live and you do not see it, then just check up in the upper right-hand corner, make sure you select that button there. And for anybody who's a Twitterer out there, just use the hash mark for ERwin webinar to live chat during this webinar. And I'd like to see your comments later on, but feel free to converse amongst yourselves. So the agenda for today, we're going to be recapping ERwin, the webinar 1, just very briefly, just a few minutes on that, just for those who did not attend, and also covering some FAQs that I received after regarding that first webinar. Then we'll have a demonstration, topics that will be covered within the demonstration, annotations, different reporting options, common editor behaviors and what you can expect to see there, and then more on themes and diagramming concepts which were introduced last time but we'll see in much more detail today. And we'll follow that up with a Q&A. We'll try to get to the Q&A a little bit earlier this time because I know there were a lot of questions last time. So hopefully we'll be able to get to most of them in this next session. So to begin with, let us have our first poll. And the question is, who has installed ERwin R8? So have you installed ERwin R8? Whether this is whether you're evaluating, whether you're using the community edition, or whether you've upgraded, or you're just evaluating for your company, let us know yes or no. And there's a time limit of 4 minutes on this, and then we'll give you the results once that's done. So I'm going to continue the presentation while you all vote. So in the first webinar, let me just do a quick recap. We spoke about, and these are topics, if you're interested, please do go back to the webinar links and check out the previous ones. We had licensing considerations for the standalone ERwin tools, also for model manager upgrade and licensing methodology for that. We showed you how to customize your toolbars and how to customize your workspace, so you have the different methods of placing those different dockable windows and making them recede and expand when needed. Also, we speak about what you're going to expect to see when you have your file upgrade conversions. For example, main subject areas are no longer required. They're not mandatory anymore in a tool. What strategies do you want for that? What strategies do you want on the behavior of transforms? The behavior of transforms has changed in R8, and there's an editor that walks you through that, and we explained how that works. Also, new relationship behavior. You can have multiple bends within your relationships, and you can also reset the lines and have different behaviors on that, different layout options as well. That was discussed in that webinar. Tabular table display and entity display and how you enable that, and that's probably what you're going to see when I do the demonstration. So if you're curious to know how that works, go back to that previous webinar. Callouts, which is just the ability to see how an object relates to another one with kind of like a little dashed line that shows the relationships between them when you're moving them around the viewable area. That's something you can enable pretty readily, and we showed that there as well. And also some diagram level printing settings that exist at this individual diagram level. So those are the topics that were covered, more or less. Some other things were covered as well, but if any of those topics sound interesting to you, make sure to check that out if you did not already attend. Also, if people who did attend, you probably saw me fumbling around at one point trying to find how to make the display lines appear on top when I had migrated a model, and these tables were basically behind the drawing objects. The relationship lines, I should say, were behind the drawing objects, and I was trying to make them pop to the front, and I couldn't figure out how to do that. And I knew there was just a checkbox somewhere. So for anybody who attended that or has the same issue when they migrate their models, the property is in the Display tab. In your diagram properties, it's Display tab, the Display tab, and then it's Display lines on top, which is that checkbox at the bottom of the editor. And you see a screenshot of it right here. So that's where that was. So that's kind of a little cleanup from the previous webinar. Also, we had a couple of questions on reporting topics as far as different behavior on how to generate reports with the new tools, etc. We're going to be covering a lot of that today, so stay tuned. And we'll probably have more in the future, either on my blog or via webinars, webcasts. We will also address some of these reporting questions, but we're going to cover a lot of your questions today. Also, Teradata enhancements. I had multiple people asking me, are there any enhancements for Teradata in the new release? And yes, this is a very good reason to upgrade to R8. There is full version 13 feature exploitation within the ERwin R8. So in response to everybody who asked that question, this is a good reason for you to start to move towards R8. Last question, probably the most common topic. I mean, I probably had more questions on this than anything else. I forgot to announce the results of the topics, or I should say the last poll that I had was requesting, what everybody would like to see in the next topics, and I forgot to announce the results when at the end of the presentation. And basically, just so everybody knows, the results were more high-level features. So that was the number one thing that everybody wanted to see, which is what we're going to be looking at today. So your wish is my command. Crystal reporting, people asked about bulk editor. We're actually going to touch on that pretty extensively here, and once again, we'll probably have further follow-up either via LinkedIn or on my blog, etc., on that as well. But we're going to touch on that pretty heavily here. And lastly, people did also, popular request was to have like a web-based data warehousing consultation, and that is something that we may do as well. So your results here, yes is about 32%. No, about 68%. There's actually 80 attendants, so I know a lot of you are not participating here. About half of you did not participate in the poll, but that's okay. You don't have to participate if you don't want to. But I do think that's probably a pretty accurate representation of what we'd expect to see here. People are probably still not quite ready to move into R8 or to test it out. By the way, anybody who, I just kind of drive this home 100 times, but I'll bring it home again, is the fact that if you have never used ERwin before, if you have used it in the past, don't have any kind of current maintenance, there's still no reason to download R8 and give it a try. The evaluation software or the community edition, well, if you install the software and have no license on it at all, it runs as community edition. It's just for 25 entities max, but it gives you full functionality aside from that. So it's definitely something you can familiarize yourself with the tools and the different ways of modeling and the new methods in there. So whether you have, even if you have current 7.x implementation in your company and that's your standard, that's okay too. Install the community edition. You can have both tools running concurrently. There's no conflict at all. You can even have your separate API code running on different projects and everything. Even at that level, there's no conflict. So feel free to install and have fun and start learning the new features. So let's go right into my demonstration. Very short this time, not too many long slide presentations here. And let me just share my desktop. There we go. And now my desktop is being shared now, I'm pretty sure. Okay, great. I'm getting confirmation that it is. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is some of this annotation behavior you're going to see in the tool. First of all, you can create different drawing objects like we saw in the past with R8. This is the eMovies model, which comes standard with your installation. And what you can do here is you actually have the ability of creating these drawing objects like we have in the past. So for example, we have like a box here, we have like a circular object here, and you can actually create these drawing objects in your design, create text boxes, put text in them, etc., customize them, give them different behaviors, fill colors, etc. And another key feature here is this ability to draw relationships between your drawing objects and your, the physical objects in the diagram. So the nice feature of having this correlation between the two is that they actually move together. So in the past, you might have had drawing objects where, in your ERwin software, you drew an object, but there was no relationship there between one and the other object. So once you've actually had drawn it and started moving it around, the only way to kind of keep that relationship in place was by having a grouping of those objects together, but then grouping had issues because sometimes you couldn't edit certain properties when objects were grouped together. So now what you're doing here is you're creating a drawing object and then you're attaching it via these lines, and the lines do not actually enforce any kind of relationship. It's simply a drawing object, but the objects move together. So the relationship between the objects, the drawing objects, and this move together. Another really nice thing about these annotations versus what we saw with text objects in the past, when you created a text box, it existed, I believe, at the subject area level. So it can exist in the subject area, but if you had the exact same text box in 5 different subject areas, you had to recreate it in every single subject area. That's no longer the case anymore. If you go and create a new diagram, you'll see that when you go to include objects in your diagram, that you can include the annotation here, which is just that text box. It's called, the type of object is an annotation object. And one nice thing about this, of course, is that you can have these reusable across multiple diagrams. So I can include some of my tables and also my annotations. I might not want to include the partition note, for example. And then when I go here, I actually have these objects available in my view. Oh, there it is, hiding in the background. So you can actually include, as you create new diagrams, you can include these objects, make them reusable objects. So that's the first thing I want to touch on was that's one thing is these actual objects of annotation. I'm just actually just stepping back through using the undo feature, going back, undoing all those features. And that's something that, of course, is unique to ERwin, is that lengthy undo redo capability of like a full activity log of all your actions during your particular session. So that's the first point I wanted to make about annotations. The other one is these things we're going to see here where, you just mouse over an object, and of course, we also get these comments, and this is what you're seeing there in those bubbles that pop up are the actual comments on the objects. This is happening for your relationship lines, for example. If I mouse over one, if my mouse would behave, here we go. And also you see it when you go to your table definitions, of course. So this is occurring on all the objects that you're mousing over within your display. So another nice little feature there, and that's something that's just default behavior within the tool, and it's going to happen. But just to let you know, what you're seeing there within the comment there is just the auto sizing property and then the actual definition on the object. So that's the first point I want to touch on, just some of these little annotation things, something I didn't get to speak to in much detail last time. Now, the bulk of the presentation is really going to be touching on this next feature, which is all the different reporting options in the software. I know that's something that people are going to want to be able to start reporting on their models after they create them pretty quickly. So let's take a look at some of the reporting features. The first thing I'd probably tell you, if you're trying to print out your models, is to go into your display and turn on, I should say layout actually, is it? And show my page. I want to turn on my show page grid. So once again, it's in the layout tab. Turn on show page grid. And we'll see here, and let me zoom out. You see here that you see the page grid of the diagram. Now, I find the easiest way to generate these is, first of all, I do Control A. Control A is just simply going to select all the objects in my viewable area. And then I'm going to start resizing my page. And you'll see that the different edges of the page have different behaviors. So this one, for example, expands both edges of my display at the same time. But what I'd like to do here is I'm going to start to move this into one of these areas and then adjust my edges. Let me adjust this way. And we'll see that now, and I'm going to zoom out again so we see everything here. Now that I've captured the entire diagram. Now, since I already did a Control A, it's very easy for me to just kind of center this, for example, on my display. And then I can resize this a little bit more if I drag in this way. So using these two things together, the page resize, and then just kind of moving the object, or the selected objects exactly the way I want them. This is the quickest way I find for getting the page to be the way I am. So now I'm going to move this edge up, for example, and now I don't really like the way this the borders are laying here now. So once again, I'm just going to move this a little bit more centered. So that's my first point I want to bring up is, okay, so first in your layout properties, turn on show page grid. Second, Control A. And I'll do that again just so everyone can see. Control A, that selects everything in the viewable area. And then third, start playing with the page grid. Move the boxes around the way you'd like. Get the page approximately where you want it to be. And then if you want to center it a little bit more, just wait till you get those crosshairs like you're seeing there right now. And then just make this tweak, adjustment to the left, to the right, etc. Get it nice and centered. And then you're ready to print. So now you're ready to print. So what do we do now? So now at the diagram level, once again, we just right click on the view on the empty space. We go to properties and we go to page setup. There's a tab now that contains all of your page settings. So given all the tweaking I've done here, it's modified these behaviors in this particular diagram. So you see my zoom level is down to 49%. In this particular case, my page size is A4. But of course, if we made this like, let's make this really large for like a plotter, for example, I might want E size, which is 44 by 34, and my zoom level is 49. So if I close that, you'll notice now that I have a lot more space here. So once again, I'm going to zoom out. Oh, zoomed out too much. And I'm going to resize the page, the edges of the page, so that it's not so much empty space. Let me move this one again. And now, once again, Control A. I'm going to bring these. I'm going to bring these up here, and I can just keep resizing here as well. And let me drag this down into my viewable area again. Oh, I forgot to do Control A to select everything. There we go. I'm going to zoom back in again. And now, for example, if I go into my properties and I look at my page setup, you'll see now that my zoom level is at 127% because it's a much larger page. So first of all, know what page size you want to specify. This is in your page setup tab in your actual diagram. This varies from diagram to diagram. You'll see that this, if I go to this particular attribute column display logical diagram, which I can just click in this one editor, I can just jump from one diagram to the other. I'll see that I'm still using an A4 printer there. But in this particular display, I actually changed this to a larger E-size page. So this is a 44 by 34 because I may want to print out to a plotter or something like that. And then once I've made my page bigger, I want to be able to modify this accordingly. So that's the first, and of course, make sure to have your layout page grid, show page grid turned on. That's going to facilitate the ability of laying out these diagrams the way you want them to. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out. When you're printing and you want to lay out, this is probably the easiest way to kind of get it exactly the way you want it to look on the page. But let's say you want to generate a diagram even more quickly. What you could do, this is actually something I suggest, it's probably the easiest way to quickly draw a diagram, is to zoom in to the magnification you'd like. And now, just to let you know that you want to zoom in until the text, for example, is very clear. Let me go to a different display here, one that has like columns, and null options, etc. displayed. So in this display here, I want to zoom in until the text is readable. And you'll see why, because the magnification that I specify here is going to impact my resulting image. So step one, zoom into the magnification you like. Step two, tools, generate current diagram picture. Generate current diagram picture. And you'll see that what you have the ability here is to create an EMF file, which is enhanced metadata, meta files, I should say. Now, for those who aren't familiar with this, this is just basically an image file. It contains text and graphical information, and you can actually open it in any standard ERwin, or I should say any standard Microsoft Word product. But so we're going to be prompted for this save as, and we're going to save as, I'm just going to call this test image. And let's save that. And now let's take a look at it. Now, I've tried to do this in the past, and sometimes having my WebEx running messes up does not allow me to display. But let's see if it works this time. So here we go. So the image is here. I can zoom in and zoom out, and you'll see that it's, the font is easy to read, even as I zoom in more and more, and I zoom out. And now you'll notice it just opened up in Windows Picture and Fax Viewer. You'll notice also that it's the exact image that I wanted, the entire diagram display. And it has just a nice little neat border around the edges, no excess. And I don't have to relay out the diagram. I don't have to play with my page settings, etc. And then, of course, from here, I can just print. So if you want to print here to your plotter or print to as a PDF or anything like that, you can print. So that's a really fast, convenient way to generate an image and quickly generate a result. So first of all, once again, let me go over again what we just did. The first thing we did is we zoom in to the magnification that we want here. Make sure you zoom in enough so you can read the text clearly. If you don't zoom in enough and the text is blocky or breaking apart, that's exactly how it's going to look in your resulting image. So first, zoom in. Next, tools, generate current diagram. That's going to generate these EMF files. And then, of course, just open the EMF file. If I do preview, for example, it just opens in my Windows Picture and Fax viewer. Of course, if you're lucky enough to have like Photoshop or something like that, you have even more extendable tools there. But even from the point of view of just in this image viewer, you can now just print out this image. And it's a very easy way to distribute your models. So that is the second point I wanted to make about generating some output images. Third, let me see how much time we have. We're halfway through. Okay. Third thing we have is we're going to talk about crystal reports. So what we had in the past, actually, I shouldn't say in the past, but in the previous meeting, and also on, I was on an ERwin users group meeting where I was presenting with Ed Bonteghi, and there was a like an outcry during the presentation of all these like messages that were coming in saying that we couldn't generate PDFs and that you couldn't generate HTML. So and I for a moment there I was like, well, maybe I was mistaken, but it's actually not the case. So let me actually show you how that works, because I guess there's some confusion about this as well. But what I would suggest, the first thing is, if you've used Crystal Reports Developer in the past, by the way, the developer tool is still included with ERwin. So don't worry, it's still there. But if you just want to generate one of these pinned reports, like for example, I want to do this current diagram membership, logical, let's say. And I think this is only going to contain the image and the table definitions. There's also one that contains the table and column definitions. That takes a little longer to generate. So let me just execute the simpler one here. And I think I did. But Crystal does take a minute to run. So let's see. Did I select logical or physical? I think it's running now. Here it is. So I want to go to my first page. Let me go to the second page. So here we have the image embedded in my Crystal Reports document. And we also have like the table definition, the table down here. And we can include more information like table definition, table and columns. It takes a little longer to run, but it still gives you pretty much what you'd expect to see. But now we want to actually export this to some different type of file type. So we go to File, and you could do a print from here, of course, but you can also do a file export. And the export allows you to generate different file types. So one is a Crystal Report, and if you have Crystal Report Viewer, which is free, by the way. So if if you want to distribute this to someone who doesn't have ERwin installed, and they can just download Crystal Report Viewer from the Crystal Reports pages, the Business Objects website homepage, and that would give you the ability of downloading Crystal Reports Viewer for free. It's just like Adobe Reader or something like that. But right here, the second option down, we have the ability of generating a PDF file. And I've generated some PDFs here that you see above. But you can actually just generate a PDF right here. That's a different file type specification. And then, of course, other options you can select as well. You can generate for Word, for example, as an RTF file, and also as a RTF file, which is not in a doc format. So you can have the doc format and the RTF format as well. And these are both editable, so you can continue to develop or design in Microsoft Word, or if that's something that you're more comfortable with. Also XML export, but the XML export's only really for textual information. But of course, if we're concerned with the image as well, you'd probably want to generate a PDF or a Word doc, for example. So let's see what the PDF looks like. I'm going to call this webinar test. Where do I want to save? My desktop. Let's try that again. There we go. Export complete. And let's take a look at, here we go. And if we open the diagram, here's our image embedded in the report. And you see this one goes to multiple pages, but of course you can resize this as you're generating the report to get the size you want. But here we generated a PDF from the tool. And then now back in the reporting tool itself, the second point I wanted to make is, once again, people mentioned that we couldn't actually generate HTML reports. This does require an extra step, but it is still supported as well. So the way to generate an HTML report, once with the exact same results that we already have, we can actually come in here and simply go to Edit, Edit, and then Edit Design. And now Edit Design is going to open the exact same report in the Crystal Reports developer version. And this just takes a minute to come up. And what we see here, this is actually the design version of the report that we've generated. Of course, this is editable. Anybody who understands Crystal can start coming in here and playing with this to customize these columns and generate a report more to their specifications. And of course, you can save it and reuse it if you need to. But if you don't know how to code in Crystal, and you still want to generate an HTML report from this, it's pretty straightforward. What you do is you go to File, Export, Export Report, and you see here we have some of the same options, but we have even more options here than we saw in just the viewer. You have the ability of generating an HTML 4.0 result. And this is pretty straightforward. It creates an HTML report that, and I won't show you here because it's going to create multiple pages, but basically what it is just creates a bunch of HTML pages. And, you know, for page 1, it has a link to page 2. For page 2, it has a link to page 3, etc. And you can even, when you're saving it, simply save it to a, when you save it to a disk file, you can actually specify, in this case, you know, I can put it on my desktop or something, but you can even specify like a server where you're going to be publishing this, and of course, that way the report is automatically generated, and anybody can just go there and see the resulting result set. So that's the next point I wanted to make, is that you can use the designer to generate those HTML reports. You can also, if you use business objects, you can actually connect to your repository and save this into the repository directly. Also, from the developer point of view, I definitely suggest people should play around with this. It's pretty powerful to be able to, for example, embed an OLE object that automatically reads the open diagram in ERwin, so you can kind of have this like run automatically. It'll save you a lot of time in the long run. It does require some customizations. There is a learning curve, but obviously there are people in your corporation who may very well already be familiar with Crystal reports. And even if you're not that familiar, it's pretty easy to just start to, you know, drag and drop, columns from the existing result sets as it is. So definitely something to look into, but even the canned reports will give you, a decent, results anyway. So that was the second thing I wanted to mention, was talking about Crystal reports generating from HTML, generating to PDF. So the next topic, how much time we got left? We may run out of time for questions again. So the next topic is the bulk editor. So I know the bulk editor is something that people have been talking about a lot. Let's take a look at some of the features of the bulk editor and actually do a demonstration here. So the way we do this is we just, so first of all, let me show you that again. It's available from this editor down below. We just mouse over the bulk editor, and that expands this window. And now we're going to actually build, in this case, you can build reusable reports, so you don't have to build these every single time. I'm going to be building one from scratch and show you some of the features here. Actually, you know what? I wanted to run this. I'm going to do a reverse engineer here of an Oracle environment. And I'm going to filter here on, this is just a small demo database that I'm going to be reverse engineering here. I'm going to accept all the defaults here. And just reverse engineer this repository. Let me zoom out here. And we see some HR tables in this particular environment. So let's go into our bulk editor, and I'm going to generate a new report here. And my object type we're going to be concerned with, we first specify the highest level object we want to begin our reporting at. So I'm going to specify table in this particular case. You can also select multiple objects. That actually gives you a subset of the objects. In some cases, you may want to do that. Like, for example, you might want to apply themes to multiple types of objects like tables and views, etc. But in this particular case, I want to just look at my table properties. Now, the properties I want to look at, and I can look at quite a few of them here. You see everything that's in the table is there. And, of course, this is where you want to build reusable reports. You don't necessarily want to specify this every single time. But let's say I want to specify my theme. I want to specify my owner. And I want to, let's just do that for now. I can always edit this if I want to more. Then we do object selection. In this case, I'm going to select all my objects. And now I'm going to specify the order I want, owner and theme, that's fine. I'm going to include the owner path. Actually, I'm going to exclude owner path in this particular case. I'm not going to go into too much detail as to what that means. But now there's a few things I want to point out here. So first of all, I have these so you'll see here I have the owner specified. I have the and I have the theme specified here. Now I haven't allocated any themes to this particular diagram yet, and I have these owners specified here. So I just want to kind of show the power. Now, first of all, you can do this with any possible properties in the model, but I just want to kind of show you like a real use case where this might be something you'd want to actually do. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my table. I'm going to display my owner, just so you can see it in the background here. Now, the first thing to mention is you have the ability of filtering objects here, specifications. So I can actually just like put in, like start typing in words like regions, for example, and you see that it automatically filters down to that. But let's say I do like job, and you see it's just these two tables. Now let's say I wanted to change the owner on job history and jobs for some reason, and I wanted to actually go in here and change these to a different owner. I could actually go in here and say like new, for example, and then I could copy this value, and then I could actually highlight this whole area here. And then I could actually say paste text to owner in all selected rows. So you see it actually occurred to both. Let me unfilter this so you can actually see it in more detail. I could actually, once again, I already have new highlighted. I can actually go in here and once again highlight all of my rows. And once again, paste text owner to all selected rows. And you'll see not only have I now updated my owner on all these objects, just by simply highlighting them and pasting, but you'll see even in the background that the objects themselves have changed owners based on what I've actually specified here. Now this one object over here, you'll notice is still HR, but this was a view, so that's the reason that this is still showing HR. This is not a table, but you'll see that all the other tables, if I go back into the model display, are now showing the new owner. Another nice thing, for example, is let's say that I want to specify a theme on an object. So I'm going to do this classic theme, which is just this black and white, text, black text on white background. And I actually wanted to have the ability of copying this into another field. So what I can actually do is I can actually copy the cell there as well, and then paste the theme property itself into all of the other fields. Copy the cell. There we go, themes. And then I can actually go and highlight all the other ones here as well. And I can do a paste to theme in all selected rows. And now it says classic theme, but you'll notice not only have I entered the property here, but the actual display properties have changed across the model. So now you have the ability of very quickly changing a property on an object simply by filtering on it. In this case, I'm showing you how themes can be applied, but I'm trying to show you this even at the metadata level, because what I want to show you is that this is something you could think about using, like let's say you want to have reusable table definitions, reusable table space definitions, physical storage parameters, maybe a partition that's going to be on certain tables applied to a certain theme. You build the report, you filter on that schema owner, you take the partition definition for one particular table or fill it in, just paste it in one as text, and then paste it into all the other objects. So you have the ability of now doing that for multiple objects at the same time. And of course, and I think I touched on this briefly in the last webinar, but I do want to bring it up again, is the fact that, of course, you can actually export this as a CSV file. You can actually open that in Excel. You can make your modifications there if you're more comfortable making it there, or if people who don't have ERwin. And then you can import that CSV file back in again, and that will also automatically update your model. So, it's twofold there. One is the ability of, without having to use the API, which you might have been using in the past, be able to create, a metadata report on your models, specify certain behaviors on certain, certain properties, maybe, like I said, once again, storage properties, partitioning information, etc. Copy and paste that into multiple tables, and then update the actual live model with those changes. And then, of course, other option as well is exporting that and getting it out to your users so that they can make edits and then move them back in. And I think the last topic I'll be able to cover today, because it's going to be pretty extensive, is these common editor behaviors. I'm going to show you these common editor behaviors from within the context of the column editors. But this is going to be properties that you're going to see over and over again, behaviors you're going to see in all your editors. So one key feature you're going to see in your editors is, first of all, at the top of the page is this tabular view of your objects. So in this case, I have my attributes in this particular table. I can jump to another table from this pull-down menu, like Employee Table, for example. But what you'll see here is I have a tabular format up top where I have all of my columns listed. So I can actually change my parent, domain parent, I should say. I can change my physical data type right here from a pull-down menu. I can, make this a primary key or not, turn the physical only option on or off, and I could do all of this from within this kind of grid editor. I don't have to go and open every single one to make those changes. Nice little feature to have, of course. The less of this that you can do, the better off you are. You can also do filtering like we saw in the bulk editor. All these editors also allow you to filter. So I can actually start typing like employee, for example, and now I'm seeing only those employee columns there. I can put in, and you can actually, it's not only with, this is a wildcard search, by the way, so if I put in like type, there is no type, let's do date. So you see hire date, for example. So hire date, even though I'm, it's a partial string match, it still is filtering correctly on that string. So nice whether you want to find a particular type of column or whether you're looking for a column based on a string, you can quickly filter by just typing in the text here. Another nice feature here that you're going to see is object ordering. So this is something that's more specific to the column editor, but exists in other ones as well. But you'll see, for example, you can have alphabetical ordering, I should say, reverse alphabetical ordering, column ordering, which we expect to see, which is display level, and physical ordering. So in the past, a lot of times people would say, I didn't know what the physical column order was. I had to change the display in the model to see that. Now you can see that all in one place. So it's just a checkbox to change the behavior on the view itself. Another change in the editors themselves is that in the past, when you made changes within an editor and then you exited that editor, you could, if you didn't undo, everything within that editor was undone. In this case, that's not the case anymore. So I can actually go and make some property changes here in my model. I'm going to select a different column here and change the data type here as well. Let's make this a standard string and change this here as well. I'm going to make this a phone. It's okay. Make that a standard string as well. So we're changing some behaviors here. Now what you see is this undo feature becomes available here. Now what this allows me to do is I can actually step backwards and step forward through each change I've made in the editor. Some of these are on different tabs, so we're not seeing the changes occur in real time, but you'll see now it's grayed out again. So I've basically stepped through. This is undo and redo specific to the context of within this editor. So a nice little feature. You're going to see that across the board, all your editors. So as you're making changes one thing to another within an editor itself, you don't have to exit the editor, undo everything, and then go back into the editor. You can actually just say, oh, I just want to undo that very last thing that I just did within this editor. Another nice little feature, if you want to unlink or link the inheritance of an object to its parent object, you now have the ability of doing it at an object by property basis, and rather than having to go into that resync editor that we've seen in the past, reset column properties, you actually have the ability of doing it right here from a little pull-down menu on each individual object. Another quick takeaway here is that you'll see here is these macros. In the past, you'll see these unexpanded macros if a macro is being used. And if you want to see the expansion on it, you just click on this chevron, and then you actually see the expanded text. So just by clicking on there, you can actually see the unexpanded rather than the expanded behavior back and forth. So a nice little feature there. What else we have here I wanted to quickly touch on. You'll see more sort items, alphabetical, reverse alphabetical, domain hierarchy. So anywhere where you have a list, you will see these sorting options available. Here's a SQL Server tab, so you see all your database options available here. Expressions are supported, that started back in 7.3, but just conveniently a nice place to have it. Constraints, links. So you can create linked columns, by the way. Linked columns allow you to create columns, links between columns. They can go in one direction or both directions. And you can link them to other objects within other tables. So you can actually say, like, this customer address could automatically update properties based on, you could pick any column here. I just could select this column. I wouldn't necessarily do that, and then you could actually specify which properties you'd want to have synchronized across those objects. So it's very nice. Once you add them, they'll all appear here. Very powerful thing you might want to do when you have like domains linked to each other or columns linked to each other that don't necessarily have a parent-to-child relationship enforcing them. So, and now in the past, we saw these as transform objects, and it was very hard to understand how those transform objects related to particular columns. Now they're inside the columns, so you can actually see this is my column, this is the links between my columns. Indexes, of course, nothing really changed there. Here's where you have styles. You can apply your themes even at the column level, and you'll see that you can apply themes at any kind of level. So let's say you've defined a broad theme, and that's something that I kind of discussed in the previous webinar, but themes allow you to create behaviors on your drawing object. So you can have fonts, you can have colors, you can have fills, you can have gradients, and you can apply them on multiple objects and then have that theme defined at a very high level, and then attach that theme to a subject area or to a table or even to a column. So, and of course that column will inherit the properties that are appropriate for that particular drawing object. Comments, but now here's another really nice feature, where used. Let me show you a better example of where you would want to see that where used is in your domains, for example. So if you have, let's say, this standard string domain has, let's say, last name. So if I go to the properties in my domain dictionary, you'll see that it's very similar to what we've seen in the past. It looks very much like that same editor we saw before. A lot of the features are the same, the undo, redo, the filtering, etc., the tabular format up top. But now we have this where used column once again, and we see exactly what columns are using this domain. So it's a very useful thing to do for any kind of data governance to make sure you're using the correct domains on the correct columns. It's a very fast way to see the relationship between those objects. And of course, in this case, we only have one domain being used here, but let's take a look at state, for example. And we see that's being used in a couple of different places. But of course, it could be hundreds of columns, and once again, a very useful place to be able to identify where that is being used. So another really key component, a key property you're going to see across the board. UDPs we're already familiar with, and we just pretty straightforward. The methodology of using them is pretty much the same as before. But now notes. Notes have the ability, now what you're going to see in this notes tab that we haven't seen in the past is, first of all, we have notes in the physical model, which everybody wanted to see. Now we have notes in the physical model. And on top of that, the notes and the history objects are all merged together simply as notes. You can quickly report on notes, and history objects together, or there's a filter here, so you can see only your history. For example, in this case, these are all history items, or notes only. See, there's no notes at all, but this is all history only, so these are all history items. And changes, so first of all, history is now bundled with your notes. And another really nice thing is that your history objects actually have usernames. So when your users make changes, their network credentials are stored here with the actual object change. So now you can actually run reports to see who made what changes on what date. So very nice little added feature there, and you're going to see that across the board with any objects that you are selecting to keep history on, which by default, by the way, is basically every object in the diagram. So I know we only have a few minutes left, and that for the most part is what I wanted to cover. I did want to go into themes a little bit more. I did want to go into diagramming a little bit more, just the concept of it, but I think we've covered it pretty well here, and along with some of the issues we've seen in, or some of the demos I did in the other one as well. We could always do another follow-up webinar, of course, as well, but I do want to have at least save these last 5 minutes to take any questions from anybody. Oh, I'm sorry, you know what? I actually have one more poll, and the poll is, given what you've seen or what you've actually experienced, what are your favorite features of the tool? Like, what are the tools that you've, or I should say, what are you currently using? What have you already used? What do you think are going to be the strongest features you're going to be using in the future? So feel free to select that vote as, and while you vote, we will compile our questions and begin answering our questions. I'm going to take a vote here myself. I think, all right, I'm going to go with that one. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I have a question here. The first one is, can you view, browse an R8 model with version 7.3 Model Navigator, assuming the obvious that new features? Yes. Okay, yes, you can view an R8 model in 7.3. It's going to look different, like you guessed. The method would be you do File, Save As, and you can save your models to a 7.3 version. Even a 7.2.9 version actually is the latest, the oldest version going backwards of saving the models. So that would be a method you could share your models backwards if you did need to publish them that way. Do we have another question? Okay, how will the migrating a Teradata model be affected when upgrading from 7.2.5 to R8? When the same model in this Teradata shop were brought to 7.3. Okay, so there were issues when they migrated from 7.2.5 to 7.3. I wasn't aware of anything specific to that. I would say if you wanted to, that you'd probably want to reach out to the technical support staff over in CA if you have in the past. My guess would be that the metadata migration, just so you know, the metadata migration from 7.3 to 8.0 is not as significant, believe it or not, as it was from 7.2.5 to 7.3. I'll give you a personal example. When I went from 7.2.5 to 7.3, I had to rewrite all my API code. I have a lot of APIs that I write to kind of customize and kind of automate a lot of the things I do. So I had to rewrite them all for 7.3 because the metadata had actually changed. I run my 7.3 API in an 8.0 or against 8.0 models, and I don't have to edit them at all. So my guess is, in answer to your question, I think that it's not going to be a very painful migration, given the fact that the metadata has not changed that significantly. But if you do have issues, I would say open a ticket with the technical support staff because, obviously that would indicate some issue that they need to resolve programmatically. And, and if they identify what the mapping issues are during the migration, hopefully they can fix that with 8.1, which is relatively close. I think it's probably within a month or so when that comes out. Okay, where are the history stored in the model and in the model files? The history itself is actually, it's stored as a note. If you're curious about the metadata level of this, it's stored as a note within the objects themselves. So like an attribute will have history, a table will have history, a model will have history, and I think I'm still sharing my desktop. So if we go to like model properties, you'll see here's your history options, right? So I'll show you that again. It's model properties, history options. So these are the options. This selects what history items will be stored. You can filter this down if you don't want to see all these things. And then, of course, the history objects themselves exist at the object level. So here's in this case, we're looking at a table. And here in my notes tab, it's the rightmost tab, we have the ability of seeing, my history items here. And of course, if I go into an attribute or a column in this particular case, because I'm in the physical model, once again, here's my history items. Okay, we have how is the model mart impacted when migrating to 8, the existing version of 7? You should definitely review my previous webinar. It's available from that link that you'll see it at the end of the presentation again. But basically, the migration is very quick. And then the models are actually converted during the upgrade process. Once again, though, the model level metadata has not changed significantly, so the migration is pretty short. Like, as a matter of fact, I think the migration of the individual models from 7.2 to 7.3 versus 7.3 to 8 is significantly shorter migration. So it's very quick, pretty straightforward. And it's a model-by-model basis. So your initial migration is like very quick, a few minutes, I'd say. And then each individual model is migrated. You do a post-load upgrade, like you've seen in the past, during the file open process, that initial open. But that only takes a few minutes in and of itself. So it has not been really significant. Does 8.1 come with tutorial, including everything that you covered? 8.1 does not come with a tutorial per se, but there are a lot of really good resources. Let me actually jump to my slideshow again, and I want to discuss what do we have here. So resources, YouTube. I'll be posting videos to YouTube, and I'll keep you all informed of when that happens. But ERwin.com is a great resource. You go there first. You have tutorials. There's a video series. There's a tips and tricks. There's expert blogging from a bunch of data modeling experts, Steve Hoberman and Bill McKnight, and Karen Lopez is very active on there. And so you have between the expert blogging and all these other resources, I think that's the first place to go. Within ERwin itself, by the way, and I'm going to jump right back to my ERwin desktop again. Sorry about that. I think I messed up things here in the office when I did that. But what I wanted to point out is when you're in an editor and you have questions on that specific case that where you are at that point, hit the F1 key, and this is going to actually open the help menu in Internet Explorer, and it's going to be specific to the editor you happen to be in. So once again, just hit the F1 key wherever you are in a particular editor. It will show you, information specific to the editor that you're currently working in. So that's a really good resource. And then, of course, definitely go back to the ERwin.com page. They have a YouTube channel that's very useful. They have on-demand videos that you can watch. There's webinars that are there as well. So a lot of really useful information. Definitely go to ERwin.com. Check my blog, which I'll show you in a minute. And these are all like good resources to go to. And of course, feel free to contact me. I'll have some. So basically, you can find me if you just do a Google search on maximum data modeling. You'll basically find all my resources. If you want to email me, ca.erwin@programmers.com. On LinkedIn, just search for maximum space data space modeling. Twitter.com, max data modeling, and then maximum data modeling, one word, .blogspot.com. So just do a search on that, and you can find me there. And there's LinkedIn groups. There's a really good ERwin LinkedIn group, definitely another really great resource, and then our LinkedIn group as well. So do we have the results of the poll? Let's see. Let's show those results. Okay, so everybody likes bulk editor. It's most popular. What else do we see? The multiple layout options and overall look and feel. It's got some votes there as well. So, but really it looks like bulk editor is the thing, and I agree with that. I mean, the ability of being able to go into the bulk editor, running a report on certain object data, and then updating it in one central location is a very, very powerful feature. I know we do have some more questions. Let's answer just a couple more, and then we'll wrap up for the day. It seems you can only do it by querying using query tool. Is this the Crystal Reports? I guess you were asking in regards to Crystal Reports. Crystal Reports is using the ODBC query to generate those reports. You're correct. And that's the method in which that information is being generated. So if you've seen the ERwin current ODBC, and you can also play with this inside the context of ERwin, you can go into the ODBC editor there, which is under Tools, and you can start to play with that. And basically those results are what you are feeding into the Crystal Reports. Crystal Reports gives you a lot more power, though, of course. Once you have that information, you can do like complex joins on the data that's returned. But yes, it's using the ODBC for that. And another question, can you select an entity and all related entities and copy it to a new subject area? There's a couple ways to do that. One is yes, you can do that within the actual diagram, but even easier the method of doing that is there's a tool within ERwin that allows you to select a particular column and automatically add those objects to a subject area, and that's it's called the Spanning Neighborhood tool. And I'm actually, I think we have to wrap up here, so I don't have time to actually demonstrate that. But I think that's your best bet. So just do a search on your help menu for Spanning Neighborhood, and that should give you instructions on how to handle that. And I know there's a few more questions. Maybe I'll try to cover them in the beginning of the next webinar when we speak again. But and I think that wraps it up for today. So thanks for attending, and I'll pass it back to Kevin.
Thank you, Victor. Again, thank you for attending. If you want to contact us, please contact us at ca.erwin@programmers.com or at www.programmers.com/ca. We look forward to seeing you in next month's session of the webinar series. Thank you.